Hello everyone, my name is Vaishnavi Verma. My roll number is 205068 and my topic name is graph theory. In this video, I would like to discuss about the graph theory. Now, come to the definition of graph theory. A graph G is a mathematical structure which is consisting two terms V and E, where V is a non-empty set of vertices and E is a non-empty set of edges. For the example, here the straight line are given. So V1 and V2 are two vertices and E1 is the edge. Here the closed loop are given. So V1, V2, V1, V2 and V3, V4, V5. These are vertices and E1, E2, E3, E4, E5, 6. These are edges. Now some basic terminology are given below. The first one is the trivial graph, a graph which is consisting only one vertices and no edges, like no edges. So here the example, only one vertices are given, there is no edges are given here. Now this come to the next one, null graph, a graph consisting n vertices and no edges. Here like one vertices are given and second, third, fourth and so on. These are vertices are but edges not given. Now come to the third one, directed graph, a graph consisting the direction of edges, then this is called as the directed graph. Suppose that here like V1, V2, V3, V4, these are vertices are given. So the direction like E1, E2, E3, E4, the direction are given. So it is called the directed graph. Now come to the fourth one is undirected graph. A graph which is not directed, then it is called a undirected. Suppose that there is no direction are given, so it is called as undirected graph. Now the fifth one is the self loop in a graph. If edges having the same vertices as both its ends of vertices is called self loop. Suppose that यहाँ से हमारा vertices शुरू हुआ, come to the same point, so that is called the self loop in a graph. Here the triangle are given like vertices V1, V2, V3. Here loop which is start from is from V3 come to the same point. This is called the self loop in a graph. Now come to the sixth point, proper edges. And edges which is not a self loop is called proper edge. Okay, come to the seventh point, a collection of two or more than two edges having identically endpoint. So it is called the multi edges like V1 and V2. So like multi edges होनी चाहिए like E1, E2, E3. Look, so E1, E2, E3 are the multi edges. Now come to the 8th point, simple graph. A graph does not contain any self loop are called मतलब self loop and a multi edge are called simple graph. Here the diagram like vertices V1 and E1, E2, E3. This is the simple graph. Now come to the ninth point, multi graph. A graph does not contain any self loop but contain multi edge are called multi graph. मतलब एक ऐसा ग्राफ जिसमें सेल्फ लूप नहीं होना चाहिए बट वो मल्टी एजेस को कंटेन करता हो, उसको हम मल्टी ग्राफ कहते हैं. ओके, नाउ कम टू द 10th पॉइंट, सीडो ग्राफ. अ ग्राफ कंटेन बोथ सेल्फ लूप एंड मल्टी एजेस इज कॉल्ड सीडो ग्राफ. हेयर like vertices V1 दिया, V2 दिया, V3, V4, V5, V6 and here the edges E1, E2, E3, E4, E5, E6 and the self loop also given here. So which is contain the multi edges and also self loop. So it's called pseudo graph. Now come to the 11th point, incident and the adjacency. Okay, let E1 be an edges joining two vertices like V1 and V2 and E is said to be the incident on V1 and V2. two vertices are said to be the adjacent if there exists an edges joining these vertices is called incidence and adjacency. Come to the example. Suppose E3 edges between the V1 and V3 is called the adjacent, and V2 V3 are called not मतलब adjacent. Like suppose that E1 is the adjacent of V1 and V2, but if we take V2 and V3 of E1, so it is not adjacent. Now come to the 12th point, degree of vertices. The degree of vertices V is in our graph G written as D of V is equal to the number of edges which are incident on V with self loop counted twice. Suppose that here a diagram are given. So V1 V1 V2 these are vertices. सपोज दैट हमने मतलब मैंने क्या किया है, डिग्री ऑफ V3 निकालना सोचा, तो हमारा 1 and 2, सो 2 डिग्री कितने एजेस हैं उससे डिसाइड होता है कितने नंबर ऑफ डिग्री बनेंगे, नंबर ऑफ डिग्री ऑफ वर्टिसेस बनेंगे. लाइक V5 में ले लेंगे तो 1 2 2. लाइक वी टेक V4 like 1 2 3. These are these having the degree of V2 is 4. Okay, now come to the next one, isolated vertices. So our vertices having 0 is called the isolated vertices, and a vertices having degree 1 is called the pendant vertices. Okay, अगर 0 है तो हम उसको isolated vertices कहेंगे, अगर 1 डिग्री है तो हम उसको pendant vertices कहेंगे. Now come to the 14th one, finite and infinite graph. A graph with a finite number of vertices as well as edges is called the finite graph, otherwise is called infinite. अगर हमारे पास finite number of edges हैं, finite number of vertices हैं, तो हम उसको finite graph कहेंगे, otherwise infinite. Suppose that this is the example of finite, this is an example of infinite graph. Now thank you.